All right, well, I have always wanted to make a small alcohol stove. So last couple of days, on my free time, I've been kind of playing around with different designs, things that I've read online, videos that I've watched, things like that. Figured I would share with you guys what I've come across, what worked, what didn't work. Mainly this guy in the middle here seems to be the best. That's what we're going to focus on. First one I built was this guy. It is full of fiberglass insulation. It's got a little screen on top. It actually works all right, but it takes about 10 minutes to boil water to about 215 degrees Fahrenheit. This was the second one I built, same thing. It's got a large screen on top. I know the lighting's not good. But fiberglass insulation inside. It actually works fairly well also. It's got a very stable flame to it, much more than the first one I did. But unfortunately, it still takes about 10 minutes to get water up to temp. This is the one that I built this morning. It takes 4 minutes to get water to 215 degrees Fahrenheit, with being 2 cups of water and using about 3/4 of an ounce of fuel. I'm using denatured alcohol today. Obviously, you can use rubbing alcohol also. It just doesn't burn quite as clean. Might leave a little bit more soot on your pans. This is what I normally use. I love this thing. It's been a great little stove. It was like $13 on Amazon. But unfortunately, you got to carry these around with you. The whole thing's kind of bulky, and these little $5 tanks last about one trip. So maybe 2 days cooking food, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. This guy, you can boil 1 meal on 3/4 of an ounce of fuel, maybe 14 cents. It's pretty cheap, 10 cents, somewhere in that ballpark. Plus, it's a lot smaller, a lot lighter. I'll get into that later, but so far, I really like it. All right, I'm going to go ahead and light these up real quick, just so you can see what the difference is. Oof. All three of them take a little bit of time to warm up, but the one in the middle there is actually the quickest. Now this guy will burn 3/4 of an ounce of fuel in roughly 5 minutes. These guys will last about 12 minutes, or quite a bit more efficient. They just take a lot longer to heat up the water. You can see the one in the middle is already ready to go. This guy's still struggling. This guy hasn't figured out what he's going to do yet. Okay, you're going to need 3 cans for this. You can get by with 2, but I am using a pair of shop shears. If you want to take your time with a razor blade, you can get by with 2, no problem. I just find this to be a little bit quicker and easier. You're going to need a small pair of some kind of needle nose, something to measure with. I'm using some calipers. Tape measure's fine. Whatever you got on hand. You're going to need a razor blade of some kind. A little punch makes life easy. You're going to need some kind of little files or sandpaper and something to seal it up. I'm using a high temp silicone for automobile use. You can use JB Weld, whatever you got. Just remember that it needs to be high temp because this thing is going to get pretty stinking hot. Okay, first things first. You're going to want to cut this top off. You want to keep this rolled edge here. So you're going to need to cut from the very top down about 1/4 inch. However you need to mark that. I'm going to be using the calipers. I am not sure how well this is going to show up. I will do my best. The angles on this camera versus me working are not very cooperative with one another. So 1/4 inch from the top. What I've been doing is using the calipers to score the edge of the can, and then using a pair of shop shears to cut it. Could not get the shears in on this can. I actually have to use a razor blade, so it's very tedious. If you want, you can use a Dremel with a little cutting tool. It's a little too stiff up here to get the scissors in. Alright, so I have seen people set up razor blade setups, whatever height you need. You can push the can on here and you can roll it around several times. It does work. But you will still have to break the can loose by hand. at the very last little bit. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take my time, and I'm just going to keep going over the scored area here that I made with the calipers repeatedly until I get deep enough to where I can break it loose. I don't have a fancy setup, so this is going to have to do the job. Like I said, if you have a Dremel with a cutting tool, that's probably your best bet. It doesn't matter on this cut if it's pretty or if you crumble the can up a little bit. It's not going to be a big problem. This is going to be a sleeve for the inside. Nobody's going to see it when you're done. Okay, I spared you guys the 5 minutes of me fighting with this thing, but it is off. Next thing you want to do is measure from the cut end down 1.5 inches. Again, I'm just going to put it on the table here and score it with the calipers. Obviously there's different ways you can do this. This is just the easiest for me at the moment. Okay, probably can't see that, but this is why you need 3 cans instead of 2 if you want to do this the quick and dirty way. You just sacrifice a can here. Don't cut yourself. Okay. Next thing, you're going to need a pointed edge. I'm using a small little triangle file. You're just going to want to press this in around the sides, just like that. And this is going to allow the gas to pass up into the holes after we make them. They don't have to be perfect by any means. And once again, try not to cut yourself. This is a aluminum can after all. Okay, you can see that. Then on the bottom half, not the curved end, you want to cut about 1/4 inch or so up on all of these nice little lines. Boy, my hands are shaky. Once again, it doesn't have to be perfect, and I'll show you why here in a second. Wow, time to eat something. All right, and then what I did here was I took the scissors and I cut a little corner off of every one of these to allow a little bit more fuel to pass through. All right, There you go. Then I'm taking a needle nose and just bend all of these guys in. Got a couple little stragglers here. Yeah. All right. Bend all these little guys in. Now the reason for this is when you slide it down in the bottom, you want it to, this isn't the bottom by the way, this is just a piece of a can. You want it to curve in along this lip here and sit right in this ledge. So you curve them in so that they'll fit. Alright, there's some decision making here. You want the total height of this thing to be roughly 1.5 inches. There's two ways you can do this. Actually, there's three ways you can do this. One is you can cut the top and the bottom to about 3/4 of an inch and have a seam in the middle, put some tape on it. Or you can cut the top or the bottom to about 1.375 inches, and that will allow the sleeve, as you can see here, to fit all the way to the rim. On this one I cut the bottom long, I cut the top short at about 3/4 of an inch to slide in. I think on the one I'm doing now, I'm going to go the other way around. I'm going to make the top 1.375 inches, and I'm going to make the bottom 3/4 of an inch, so that the sleeve actually goes down and ends on the bottom and looks a little bit prettier on top. Okay, first things first, remove this pesky tab so this guy will sit up here like this. We're going to drill the holes for the burner around the sides here. The absolute easiest way is probably to measure around here. I forget the measurement. Put a piece of tape around it, take it off, put it on a table, divide that number by 16, put marks on it, put the tape back on here, and transfer your lines onto the can, and then drill your holes. I'm going a different route here. I know that it is 1/2 inch between each hole. So I'm going to cheat a little bit, and I'm just going to do what I was doing earlier and use the calipers to scar the marks on the can. I don't know if you can see that or not. Alright, I got all my marks on there. Do not go with my measurement of 1/2 inch because, as I found building a few of these things, the circumference of some cans is a little bit bigger than others. For example, Coca-Cola can, this guy will almost fit inside of it relatively easy, which is something to think about when building these, because if you're going to slide one over the top, it might make it a little bit easier. So I'm going to take my little punch, and I am just going to put tiny little spots here, and I'm going about halfway between here and here, these two lips here. Just want just enough for the drill bit to catch. And as I found out with this thing, if you push too hard, you're going to go all the way through the can. Been there, done that. These don't have to be perfect. They will work fine either way, unless you're just worried about it looking pretty. Okay, there you have it. Alright, I am using a 1/16 inch drill bit. I've seen people use 3/32 for smaller flames. I like the way this one works, not quite as efficient, burns fuel a little bit faster, but with that being said, it also gives you a much hotter flame. So if you're more concerned with how long it takes the water to boil versus how fast it's using the fuel up, this seems like a good way to go. Using a hand drill because this is an angled surface here, and the drill press just doesn't tend to like that with these small bits. They just roll off and end up snapping on you. As you can see, I'm drilling with the angle. There you have it, 16 holes. Okay, we're going to be using the trusty wobbly Harbor Freight drill press. I've got a 1 1/8 inch hole saw in here. Not quite critical, I don't think, as far as what size you're using. I have seen people take this entire bottom section out here. What I did notice experimenting with this is that the size of the hole seems to make a big difference, because the larger the hole, the more flame you're going to get out of here. Smaller the hole, the smaller the flame. Bigger hole, it will actually get hotter faster and start igniting these guys around the outside. So you don't want to go too small, but if you go too big, it seems like it burns more fuel around here versus shooting out of the jets. So this seemed like a good one. Good size, seems to work pretty good. So you're going to want to center it up, put a little mark on it, which I forgot to do. It doesn't have to be dead center unless you, again, are worried about it being beautiful, but you want it close. You don't want to be aggressive on this because you don't want it to catch and rip the can apart. There you go. Now if you want to, you can take a round file and just run it around the inside. Get rid of some of the burrs. Nice and pretty. Okay. Real quick, earlier I said that you were going to need 3 cans. You actually can get by with 2. This is the other half of the sleeve that we were making. And this will work as the bottom. So yeah, just wanted to correct myself there. Like I said, I'm going to measure from here down 1.375 inches because I want this top to slide all the way over. So I'm going to go ahead and score it again with the calipers. Just so I have a line to go off of. And then butcher it with the scissors. Now you want this cut to be pretty, because it is going to be coming into contact with your skin, so you don't want it to be all jagged. Take your time on it and make sure it's nice and smooth. These particular scissors here really good about leaving a nice smooth edge. But if you're not so lucky, you're going to want to grab some sandpaper or a small file and run over it real quick. But yeah, nice and round. So yeah, there's our top. Pretty easy to make. If you're like me at this point, you're probably going to want to flip this over, either take a small countersink or a drill bit and then just carefully deburr the inside of the holes here, because they will have some little boogers sticking out. Yeah, I lost count here. Alright, got them all. Okay, trial and error here. I just realized something. If you make the top overlap the bottom, and you make the bottom short, if you put too much fuel in here, you can have some issues, assuming you don't seal it up well. I'm going to go ahead with it just as is. I don't think it'll be a problem if I seal it up good. Another thought I had was to make the bottom also 1.375 inches. Problem with that is you have to crimp this to get it to fit into here, and I'm not sure if it'll end up interfering with the flow of the gas to the burners on the outside here. So I don't know if I want to take that chance. I'm not even sure if this is going to work good. We'll find out when we get done here. It may be all in all best to go ahead and do the bottom sleeve all the way to the top, just for safe measures. Alright, next thing you want to do is make yourself a bottom. I just happen to have an extra one here, so I'm not going to make another one. But same thing with the top. You're going to measure from the very bottom lip up 3/4 of an inch. Scar it, mark it, cut it. But yeah, I had no reason in cutting another one. So then you're going to take this, whether this is the bottom or the top, depending on how you made it, the short side, and you're going to just crimp it a little bit in by giving a little twist. You want to be careful not to puncture it, because then you'll have a hole to fill up so it doesn't leak. And this is going to be the most complicated part here, because you really have to be careful trying to fit these two pieces together. They do not want to cooperate with one another. Also, if you have a skinnier pair of needle nose, probably a good idea. Okay, this is going to slide inside of this, I hope. Alright, so this guy that you cut earlier is going to fit down in here. Oh so carefully without slicing yourself up. Being a wee bit stubborn. I can immediately see a drawback to this, making the top longer than the bottom. Alright, now if you can see, they all curved in, met that little lip. That's what you want, right there. Do not cut yourself on this. I know I've said it a few times already. This guy is going to go on, and you're oh so carefully going to work it over the sides of the bottom. and it is easier said than done, that is for sure. I find it good to apply just a little bit of pressure and slowly work your way around. You're probably going to need a screwdriver, razor blade, something, anything to just get in here and just loosen up any little corners that catch. I don't particularly like using the razor blade, but it was sitting right there. Actually, it's working better than a screwdriver. Come on. Okay, that wasn't so bad. All right, squish it down real good. All right, as you can see, I made this a little bit too tall. Yeah, everything fits. If you're gonna glue it, you're gonna want to put the glue in before you do this, which is gonna be very messy. I'm gonna try this without the glue and see how it does. And if I like it, I'll just I'll seal it up right here afterwards. All right, I decided it would be a good idea to go ahead and seal this thing up. So what I've done is backed the sleeve out a little bit so that I can get to this. I'm just gonna squirt a bunch of high temp silicone on there. Like I said, if you have JB Weld or anything that'll handle high heat, that's probably a good way to go. Doesn't need to be a whole lot. I'm not making it watertight, just keeping it from coming apart for the most part. And it is going to be messy. So you want a rag handy. All right. Go ahead and wipe off the excess. You really don't even need to glue this. When I was running tests on the first one, I was putting fiberglass in the center. I tried fiberglass around the outside, screens, a whole bunch of variations, and every one of them burned just fine without glue. There was no issues. But I don't want this coming apart inside of my pack and then having to mess with it while I'm out in the field camping or hiking or something. All right, we'll polish that up a little bit more later. And there you have it, one camp stove. Let's see if it works. I'm going to be using denatured alcohol. As I said earlier, you can use rubbing alcohol or a variety of other things, but this stuff burns relatively clean. And it's cheap. And it's designed for this. All right, I'm using probably close to an ounce. Let's see. 25 milliliters. Let's find out if this thing works. I think it went out. Turn the lights out and try again. Oh no, it's still burning. do a side by side here while we're waiting. I believe the other one would have warmed up enough to catch around the sides by now. So this one is has the bottom lip going up to the top. This one has the top lip going down to the bottom. And as you can see, this one is starting to light where this one is not. So this is the better design, obviously. Yeah, there you go. This one doesn't work. This one works very well. Okay, it's been about 3 minutes or so. This one still hasn't lit, so yeah, do not make the sleeve go over the side from the top. Bad idea. This is exactly 2 cups of water, and we're gonna see how long it takes to boil up to 210, 215 degrees. There we go. I'm gonna have to make another one of these. See, this is why you seal up around the sides. It's actually burning. Burning around the outside ring rather than the burners. I'll have to take the time to seal that back up. Okay. Water on. Lid. And temperature probe. And timer. And yes, I know there was about a 30-second lapse there. I can hear it boiling. And there you have it. About 4 minutes. Had to add that extra 30 seconds in. And we've got boiling water. So, success, failure. Alright, thanks for watching. Okay, so in an attempt to salvage this thing, I cut the top shorter and made a new bottom, and it still didn't work. So I took it apart and I found out that it wasn't the top being long and the bottom being short that was the issue. The issue was the sleeve that I made. As you can see, it's not round. It's been bent up, and what was happening is some of it was towards the center here, allowing gas to come up into the jets here, and some of it was not. Some of it was pushed up against the side of the can, allowing access from the jet to the center of the can, which is why it wasn't igniting. But as you can see, it's working good now. So something to keep an eye out for when you're doing this. Look down in the holes and make sure you cannot see daylight coming through from the center.